All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay, I want to talk about a couple of things that that I want to make sure we're all on the same page with, and kind of go over, especially new people. Brett's new, Steven's new, Jason's still, on the newish side. He's still learning. I know Jason's probably has more of this information because he's been around a little bit longer. So I want to talk about our process as far as a sales process, okay? I talked to Brett about this a little bit yesterday, but the best thing, since there's other people going to be watching the video and we'll have it for future references, is that everyone's kind of on the same page. So, our process is to go to a home. I don't care if it's for an HPC, if it's for a non-op, if it's for whatever the case is. Whenever we get there, our goal is to look and see what opportunities there are for us. Number one, to make money, and number two, to take care of the customer's products, whatever it is, HVAC, plumbing products. Because if they're taken care of like anything else, you take care of your car, it lasts longer. You take care of yourself, you last longer. No matter what we're talking about, you take care of it, it lasts longer. So when we're taking care of somebody's unit, I want to talk about one of the things that gets observed sometimes by somebody new, including, this is going to be Steven included in this, and Brett for sure. And I did a little research on it, on a safety switch. I want to talk about the safety switch. So why is the safety switch there on a unit? Doesn't matter what unit it is.
For safety.
Okay, for safety, but what purpose? So if you were to leave off the cover, and so the switch is now open or on, not engaged, which then would allow the system to not work. Why is that there? What's the purpose of it?
Keep contaminants out.
Contaminants. So a lot of our attics, for an example, what do they have in them? They have dirt, they have dust, they have blow and insulation, and all kinds of critters can be in there, and so on and so on. So what happens when those things get introduced into a unit is they don't last as long. They can have, rodents or whatever can get in there, and spiders can get in there and put a web together, and it may get right to the point where now it won't start because of a spider web. I've seen that happen. You have to clean it all out and blow it out, and to be able to light a furnace, for an example, right? I mean, there's things that happen in those units. They're basically sealed that way. They can, not that a spider couldn't still get in there with the cover on, but there's less likely of other critters getting there, rats and mice and things like that could chew up wires and just cause all kinds of havoc. So that's the reason that we tape one would be to be able to, let's say we do a new install and we tape a switch and we have the cover off. That's so we can basically see that it's working properly, that everything's good to go before we leave. The tape should always be removed before, obviously, and so the safety switch is working, right? My point on this is we talked about that's the first part of it. I want to kind of clarify that. The second part of it is when we go out to a home to make money and we see something small that is broke that we need to fix, we still need to charge for that, but it doesn't mean that we don't want to do something good for the customer and say, for an example, hey, you do need this upgrade, you need this upgrade, your ducts are getting old, whatever the case is, we give estimates, and then we can say, so right now, so far, all I have to do is repair this safety switch, okay, or replace it. This is going to be $200. I'm going to give you an estimate here for what else I see needs to be done, and it'll include the safety switch at a discounted price. That type of thing is fine. So you can discount when you get to a point where you're bundling a lot of things. If it's a large job, obviously it's going to be Kevin that's going to be doing it. He's going to be doing that type of estimate. But when you're talking to the customer about what needs to be done, and then letting them know that our comfort advisor or our owner is going to come out and go over this with you more in detail, that's what the goal is. to get the comfort advisor or to get Kevin out there so that we can sell those larger items that need to be done. Especially when you have a 25-year-old system, right? You have a 25-year-old system. you talk about energy savings alone from 25 years ago to now, there's a huge difference. So that's the goal, is to get them out there. So you get out there and you're looking at something as small as a safety switch and you say, okay, hey, I can bypass this safety switch by, undoing the wires and doing this or taping and whatever the case is. You can do that and not charge the customer anything. That doesn't help us and it doesn't help the customer, because if something were to happen because we did that, we're liable for it, right? So if we, if something goes wrong because of us tampering with the safety switch of any kind, now we're liable for whatever happens, okay? Someone else comes in behind us, another company, oh, someone taped your safety switch and that caused this and this and that, right? We're gonna be up a creek. So we don't wanna do that. I wanted to kind of show you guys this picture, and this is work that, you have a helper go in and do duct work, and, does anybody think that's acceptable? Okay, I'm not pointing out names, I'm not doing anything other than saying, this is not acceptable.
It's not even tape on it.
There's no tape on it, there's nothing. So, whoever did this, number one, whoever was the lead on this job should have made sure it was done properly if they had a helper. Number two, if you have a helper, you gotta think of it this way: if you don't know how to do something as a helper, you need to ask and say, hey, is this acceptable? Do one, ask if it's acceptable. Because a customer comes up and sees that, and some customers that never even go up in the attic or never go where the ductwork is, but if they do and they see it, it's gonna make us all look bad. One guy can make us all look bad for doing one connection not properly, okay? So it's not gonna be very efficient when it's not taped, and it looks bad, okay? So I'm showing you guys that because it happened, obviously. We're going back and fixing it. And it's not about who did it or who didn't do it, because there's more than one person involved on a job. And when you have somebody new, it's important that when you're working with that person, you validate their work, you make sure that it's done correctly, and if it's not, you teach them and train them. That's what they're there for. You can't expect someone new to come in and just know how to do everything. You say, hey, do this, do this, do this, do that, and just walk away and leave them alone. So take the time to make sure it's done right, and then we make sure the person knows what they're doing as well. That way next time, it'll be a lot easier to check them because they've done it right, okay? Does all that make sense? Okay. I'm gonna go back to the sales process. So if we have old duct work, not this particular picture, but we have some old duct work that we see is, there's so many things that can be wrong. It's leaking everywhere, it's squished, someone's been stepping on it. I've seen that where people just step over it and it doesn't, now you don't have airflow in certain places, right? So sometimes those things are a little bit easier to at least bring them to the customer's attention, take pictures, and the picture should always be in the system with your recommendations of whatever it is. And the goal is, again, to get out your comfort advisor or Kevin, to get out there and give them a bid on whatever needs to be replaced. If it's anything from ductwork to a system, we need to get them out there. And my point on this, I had another point on, the other point on it was, the one thing I'm not seeing, which is kind of strange to me, is because I know that we have the equipment here, is duct cleaning. Now I know when we get real busy and we're doing installs, we may not be doing as much of that, but I haven't seen anybody really recommend that. It's not, there's no notes about recommending it, there's nothing in the system about it. But when we have the slower times, we can do a duct cleaning. It's kind of like doing that AC tune-up. Why are we not recommending it? So to me, it's just something that you guys, you look in the ducts and, especially when you have a unit that's been there for even 10 years and they haven't ever been cleaned. You ask this certain questions. What kind of questions can you ask about that would lead you into or plant the seeds to getting your ducts clean?
Allergies.
Allergies. Does anybody in your family have allergies? And you can bring up the fact that what happens inside ducts. So tell me, I'm going to ask you guys that question. What happens inside ducts when they get dirty? Besides it's blowing dirt and dust and circulating dust into the air. What else happens?
People get sick.
People get sick,
Gives an environment for other things to grow.
other things to grow, which would be such
Mold,
as
mildew.
mold and
mites.
mildew. Right, you know, there's bacteria, everything else that can happen. And if you take into consideration what a lot of people don't even realize, because we don't go up in our attics, you know, there's critters that are gonna, if they can get there, they're gonna get in there, right? I mean, anything from birds to raccoons to rats to mice, cockroaches, whatever you wanna call it, right? And they all defecate, you know, they crap and piss and everything else. And now you have that air that's being circulated with all of that stuff. And it's gonna get into your ductworks. I mean, you do have filters, and there's filters that we can, you know, improve the air quality with. Those are other things that can be upsold, but just the simple air cleaning or just a duct cleaning, you know, it should be done how often? How often do you guys think it should be done?
Every few years.
Every 3-4 years? I mean, that, to me, I would say every 3 years at least, right?
I would say it depends on the customer, how much airflow is going through it.
And how often they use their system and so on, right? But, you know, so I mean, we should be thinking about offering that service, because it's something that'll keep us busy when we're not busy, you know, and it'll help bring income in for all of us.
At my last company, they'd offer it once a year.
Yeah. Offering it once a year is great, why not? But, you know, especially if it's been a couple, 3 years, I would say, why not? I mean, it's highly recommend it. And the words that you use when you guys are recommending something is really, really important. Okay? So as a professional HVAC tech, you know, working for a professional company, when you highly recommend something and you can give them some reasons why, makes a big difference. So you gotta get used to doing, you know, using the right words to say, hey, this is highly recommended and this is why, rather than just saying, you know, I think you know, you could use a duct cleaning, but then you kind of just, you know, don't say much more after that. You're not gonna get, there's not a likelihood of you getting that sold, okay? So I just wanted to bring that up as well.
Pictures are key. If you can get a picture of how dirty or
Absolutely.
trash the duct is, it sells itself. That's how I sell evap coils. Evap coil cleaning is as simple as, did you know this is in your AC system? And they have a whole cat
Right.
on the bottom side of their coil.
And I've seen that in my old house HVAC system. I had dogs inside of my yard. And so I had no idea, but it was like, I think, I forgot what was happening. I think it was like going on and off, like the fan was going on and off, on and off. What the heck is going on? And I had raised my my unit off the ground about 2.5 feet because my dog, the dog that I had at the time, was peeing on the evaporator coil, and so guess what? I had to replace it, right? And it wasn't even that old. But the company that I bought it from, I think it was only a couple years old, but they replaced it. And I decided to pay for the labor because they warranty, the thing they sold me on mine was supposedly it was urine, you know, had a coating on it, and the urine wouldn't penetrate it and everything else it did. So, anyway, when I got the thing replaced, I decided to lift it up, because my dog was a little dog, a little puggle. So I lifted it off the ground, and I put it on one of those made it out of fiberboard, and lifted it off the ground, and then they connected it when the air conditioning company came out. But anyways, after a couple of years, even after it being raised, I thought, okay, I don't have to worry about it anymore. But the dog hair that got sucked in all around there, it was like a blanket. It was completely, like, that's why it was shutting off. And then they had to replace a part on a small, I don't know, capacitor or something, but it had like a blanket. I'm telling you, it was like a ½ inch thick. Because I had 3 dogs, so, you know, and they were always in the side yard. So, yeah, it happens. Taking pictures, when the guys took a picture of it and sent it to me, I'm like, holy crap.
And look around to what kind of trees are around there. I mean, we don't have them around here, but cottonwood trees,
Oh, yeah. I bet.
huge problem for the guys that service equipment. 90% of their calls are because that thing is just packed and it's tripping on high limit.
Yeah.
And it's just be observant of what's around the unit, because a lot of times you can sell cleaning just because there's a bunch of bushes and flowering items around it, and it'll pack the coil up.
Right. So my point on the selling of things and taking pictures and looking at things and using those words is there's not enough of that going on from what I can see in the notes. Okay, so if you're doing it, make sure that you're putting in, I recommended this, and that, right? Because every house, unless it's a new system, should have some type of recommendation, even if it's a code upgrade, should have something. So that's gonna increase what we're, what our volume and sales is, which that brings our profit up. So that's pretty much, do you have anything you wanna add to that? Cause that's pretty much what I wanted to bring up for that, and I have a couple of little things, but.
Yeah, a couple of things. Whenever you're on an air conditioning call, you should always have probably 6 or 7 options, offers. Simple things like, when's the last time the condensate drain was cleaned? Those cause tens of thousands of dollars of damage every year. Do you even know where the condensate drain terminates? Do they have a safety switch on their evap coil or on the condensate drain? Code upgrades, drip legs. When's the last time their the return was cleaned? If it's sitting on a box, can we clean it? It's endless, literally endless. How about new registers? Just new registers alone, I can increase your airflow by 30% throughout the house and save. And these things will basically pay for themselves, and they look awesome. Women like things that look good in their house, and it's not a grudge purchase. You're prettifying their house, whatever. The amount of things are endless, and when I see people go out to a call and they address only the problem. In other words, you go out there and whatever, contactor's bad, relay's bad, whatever. And then you just say, okay, bad contactor, bad relay, thank you very much. You're not doing your job at all, not even close. And what happens is when you give them 6 or 7 options, number one, they're more likely to choose the repair, because if you just give them the repair, now they have the option of saying no. But the more options you offer them, the more likely you're going to get some of that work done. It happens to me when I take a truck in to get it serviced. Our car, it happens to you guys all the time when you take your car in. They offer you 3 or 4 things, and you wind up at least doing the minimum, right? And because these people, their time is important. They don't want to call somebody else out. But if you're not being thorough, the first thing they're going to think is, this guy's not really looking at my equipment. I'm not sure I want him to even do the repair at this point. I might have to just call another company. And that's what's going on. So make sure that you're very, very thorough, and make sure you know how that drain terminates and when's the last time it's been cleared. If it terminates under a sink and they got that rubber hose, pull that rubber hose off and show it to the customer. Guarantee it's going to look nasty. And the customer is going to want it cleaned, and there'll be no debate about it, and you can talk to them about all the damage and how to avoid that with safety switches and yada yada yada, and it's going to happen. It's like this call you were on the other day, Monday. You went out and you reported to me that it's a 2-story. There's another property on top of this property, and they have a shared condensate drain. Well, what happens if that condensate drain backs up? And the guy's not even running his air conditioner, but the upstairs guy's is. What's going to happen?
Now he floods his house.
He's going to flood his neighbor's house. The upstairs guy is going to flood the downstairs guy.
Yeah.
So what's the solution to that problem?
Change the condensate lines.
Add another
Safety
one.
switch.
Safety
Check
No.
valve.
No, well, check valve, but condensate pump.
Mm-hmm.
Condensate pump has a check valve.
Yep.
Now it can't back up into his house.
Mm-hmm.
Worst scenario, it might pump it right up to the upstairs. But I wrote her a letter that said, hey, this problem exists, and that's what great thing about pictures is. I was able to make that determination by looking at the pictures Mike took. I was able to communicate with that customer, and hopefully we get that job, because these are the things that separate you from everybody else. These little things like that, nobody ever told me that. Why did I have 3 other people go out there and nobody caught that? Right? You're going to stand out every time. And so that's why the other reason why you want to look at these things is it's the customer is going to say, hey, this guy's really paying attention. And I know these guys, they're dressed up nice, they got nice trucks, They probably cost more, but, this guy caught this problem. And that line, by the way, should be maintenance once a year, right? So they need a clean out, right? So that can be maintenance. And I even said to her that, maybe this should be on the association, not on you, because it's a shared line. Or maybe you should split it with the upstairs guy. But somebody's got to maintain that line. You can't have two people on one line. It's dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
It's very dangerous. So anyway, that basically covers it. It's just be thinking the whole time.
So one of the things that I wanted to add just at the end of it is one of the things that Brett mentioned to me, which was a really good thing that we talked about in the past before he was even here, is he says, hey, I'm trying. I did this because I was trying to help the customer, right? Trying to do something and kind of being good with the customer, and because it wasn't a real big deal, it was something that I could do this with, whatever the case is. I could kind of do something and not charge the customer because I want to get this bigger job. It's kind of the goal. That's all of our goal, is to get the bigger job if we can. The things that you do like that, is you take a before and after picture of your work area. You want to do things, if they need a repair, you do the repair, because we're doing them an injustice if we don't, right? And we have the liability. But if there's something that you can do, and I've mentioned this before, I've had guys fix a cabinet that was loose, change a light bulb, whatever the case is. If they're doing plumbing, they're under a sink, they really clean it out nice and put it all back nice, and show the customer what you're doing. Take the trash in, help them with groceries, whatever. Those kind of things, those are the kind of things that separate you also from everybody else. You're not just there to go in and sell them something or do your job and go. You're there because you care about the customer and care about, their items that we're taking care of, their plumbing and their heating and their air. So those are the kind of things that you can do above and beyond that a lot of times it builds that relationship with the customer, and then they won't forget that. They won't forget that you helped them bring their trash cans in or brought their newspaper up to them or whatever the case is. I've had guys pull weeds. They're waiting on a guy to get parts, and they were doing some plumbing work outside, changing a pressure regulator. They pulled weeds in the garden and took pictures. They had an older lady that they mowed their lawn in the back, waiting for something to come from the parts house, or while the water heater was draining or whatever, right? So there's all kinds of things you can do to separate yourself from everybody else that doesn't cost us anything except a little bit of time, because we're waiting for something, or we have a little bit of time while we're doing something else, something's draining or whatever. Those are the kind of things you can do that separate you. All right. TriNet. TriNet's going to be our new payroll company, and they're really going to be the first check that comes in next month in August will be TriNet. However, starting probably by next week, you guys are going to all get emails sent to your new emails. So, and you're gonna basically go in through that link and put in information. They're gonna make sure that all your stuff is updated, your addresses and your W-2 stuff, as far as your married, single, and how many deductions you have. They wanna make sure all that stuff's up to date. So if you had to change, now may be a good time to change to what you wanna be. But that's gonna be coming up really soon. Probably, like I said, by next week. And you'll have a login and everything else. Now your emails that you're going to use, some of you guys have the old emails. I know we have like 3 or 4 different ones, the Kalka BFP and all these other weird things. The one that you're going to be using, and if you don't have the login information, this is because I'm telling you how I set this up so that we're all consistent. It's going to be your first initial, your last name, .kalka@gmail.com. That's the one that you're going to use. Okay, so if you had another one, we need to be kind of going away from that one and trying to use just the new emails. So your first initial, last name, so mine would be ajohnson.kalka@gmail.com. It's that simple. Okay? mcousins.kalka, jrodriguez.kalka.
Is it Kalka or .k Kalka?
No, .kalka. No K Kalka, just .kalka. Okay? So if you don't have your login information, you can let Karina know, and she'll get you that to make sure that that's the email that it'll be sent to, because if you don't get one and you're checking a different email, you're not going to get it. We're not sending it to anything other than those emails, because that was my goal, and I asked Karina to make one for everybody, so she said she did.
I think it's on my phone right now.
Okay?
So I
So
have
just
my
make
phone
sure that's the
placed.
one you guys use.
That one doesn't work for me though. Just in case you're trying to
No.
communicate with me.
Kevin's has not changed at all.
It's
It's
just Kevin Kalka
Kevin
at
Kalka
Gmail.
at Gmail. His is just, and Tina's hasn't changed either,
So you
hers is.
didn't want kkalka.kalka@gmail?
Or BFP@Gmail, or, you know, all that.
So eljefe@gmail doesn't work anymore?
All right. So, the last thing I wanted to bring up, or kind of show you guys, because we had talked about this recently, and we talked about confined spaces, and this just happened yesterday. 2 sewage workers found dead at the bottom of a 30-foot manhole. They did not use the proper ventilation. They were 30 feet down with methane gas, and they both died. Okay, and they weren't even down there for very long. They were doing some kind of dye test. And I just wanted to show you guys that mainly. And there is a way, I mean, if you ever go down there, it's not only having the proper equipment, you have to know how to calculate, you know, how much airflow you need based on your space. And there's a whole calculation for that, so if it ever happens and you need help with that, I can pull up a calculator and give you that, or they can do that when you go to rent the equipment. Just, you know, when I saw that, first thing I thought of, hey, we're in the industry, guys, and I know when you get in a confined space and you don't think about the things that can happen. Now, when you're in an attic and you're in a crawl space, it's not, you still need air, but you're not gonna most likely die of methane gas like being 30 feet down in a sewer. But people do this all the time. They go down there, and it's not often that people die. You don't hear about people dying that often, but it happens. So I just wanted to bring that kind of to your attention, throw a little scare at you, because I want you guys to be safe out there. I don't want somebody being dead because they thought, oh, I'm just gonna go down there for a couple minutes and do this little test, and then I'll be right back, right?
So methane gas usually is in sewers or what? I didn't know that.
What is
Like
methane
from
gas?
Shit.
There you go.
Yeah, farts.
There you go.
I didn't
It's
even
from
think of
waste,
that
and
shit.
yeah, that's what
Right.
methane gas is. That's why you have,
They
that's
pump
why
it
in
into
your
your
toilets
house,
and your
too.
sinks you have traps.
It
You have the water
displaces
traps?
oxygen, by the way.
And it, yes, it displaces oxygen. So you go down there, and you may smell it. It smells like shit, and you're
Yeah.
used to working around shit. You go down in there, and you're doing something for a short period of time. It doesn't take much, guys, because you
Wow.
can't breathe methane gas by itself. You just can't. You can't survive.
And on that subject of stuff displacing air, again, a reminder, if you're using a propane torch, propane is heavier than oxygen. If you're in a pit and you're using propane, it will pool. If you're using acetylene, it will not pool. It's lighter than air. So keep that in mind when you're working down in a pit. There's a lot of, I learned that when I got my MSHA and whatnot from working heavy construction. If you were down in the pit working on a piece of equipment, they would not let you bring propane equipment into the pit. There was no heating applications or anything using any sort of propane. It had to be oxygen acetylene, so that it wouldn't pool up in the pit.
Makes
So
sense?
just kind of bear that in mind when you guys are below grade. If you have an option for a different torch, not a bad idea to use it.
All right. Anything else, Kevin? All right, that's all I have. I just wanted to bring that to your guys' attention because it's scary. That kind of stuff can happen.
Yeah. That's crazy.